Up here on the left is the Butler Farm Show Incorporated. Okay, TJ, thank you. So when this first happened, by the way, just you know, as an aside, I had people reach out to me, and they were like, "Hey, something just happened to Trump. Turn it on right away." It literally just happened. I turned it on, and we're just over, by the way, 24 hours of Trump being shot, and I turn it on, and when I heard it, the very first words out of my mouth, because I'm an adult male of the West, a Westman, were, "This is a firearm that is close with a suppressor or far, potentially also with a suppressor." So a silencer, popularly known as, ends up being far, but not far enough. This is where I immediately open this map, find out where it is. And a big thank you to Kate for so much of the information that I pulled up on this. And so here we go. Here's the Butler show. And I find out that the shooter was on a building a rooftop for something called ARG. I think it was, well, it says it right here, International. ARG International. It's a company that makes plastics and glass and primarily produces, I think, drinking water bottles. Okay. So I'm looking at this map and I'm thinking, the shooter was on one of these roofs and Trump is right here. That's insane. How could the Secret Service allow a roof to be open here, over here? How could they allow a roof to be open over here and then Trump to be speaking over here? Except that's not where Trump was speaking. Trump was speaking right here, ladies and gentlemen. His rostrum was right here. This is the roof. A football field away. This is where the shooter, right here, was where the shooter was laying on the roof. And this is where Trump was. No way that was an oversight. My opinion, I'm allowed to give my opinion. YouTube, I'm allowed to give my opinion. No way. Now, Republicans are already calling for investigations. And how many of you want to bet that the conclusions are going to be, it was an oversight, there wasn't enough manpower, and this needs to be checked in the future? Bullshit. This is the only roof that you could shoot him from. You couldn't shoot him from these roofs. They were right behind him. This is it. It's one football field away. No way this was an oversight. No way it was a lack of manpower. This roof was left uncovered. One football field away from Donald Trump. Now, for those out there who don't understand firearms and shooting and what an AR-15 is and what a .223 round is and what 3,300 feet per second is, an AR-15 .223 round is accurate for 500 yards. So 4 times further than this. 4 times further than this. Now, what does, you might be thinking to yourself, what does a target look like? You don't understand guns. You've never been shooting. I understand. Many of you, thanks to anti-whiteism, have been kept from firearms. And so you're as ignorant as it gets. And that ignorant just means you don't know. You're uneducated. And you're thinking that, well, if I were standing at the back of one end zone looking at another person at the back of the other end zone, they would look really small. Through your naked eye, they would. In a scope, they're that big. In a scope, they are this big. In a scope, Donald Trump's head by itself is this fucking big. And if you have sighted properly your weapon, in other words, you've gone out with your weapon and you've made sure that what your crosshairs are on is where the bullet goes, then you are dead balls accurate. The bullet will go directly through. 500 yards is not even a situation where, excuse me, is not even a situation where in and of itself, you really have to account. And, you know, my target shooters can step up and they can provide more detail. But in my experience, you're not like having to adjust a lot for gravity and even wind. Not giant adjustments. Okay. A football field, no adjustments. Practically 2-3 round. The bullet is hitting where the crosshairs come together. You have a millisecond at 3,300 feet per second for this bullet or bullets to go from this rooftop to this rostrum where Trump is speaking. That roof, you can see them both here, zoomed in as far as Google Earth will go. This is where the shooter is lying. That's Donald Trump's head. There's no way that this was an oversight. There is no way that this was a lack of manpower. We can talk more about that, and you can share your thoughts as to what you think is or was going on there. But this is an easy shot. And I submit that this 20-year-old had successfully targeted Donald Trump's head the moment he began squeezing the trigger. But as he was squeezing that trigger and releasing that hammer on that 2-3 round, Donald Trump did this. And instead of going through this part of his skull, it went through his ear. The exact moment that he's pulling that trigger. Anyone could shoot a target from this distance. You could be brand new to firearms. And I'm guessing that Bethel, PA, it's country folk. He's probably a hunter. You know, not all anti-whites hate firearms. I know conservative content creators, they love to sit back and laugh about how they're all afraid of firearms and they wet their pants, and it's a big laugh. They're not all afraid of firearms. This anti-white mutt was probably a hunter, probably very familiar, probably grew up all around hunting. And do you know in PA, maybe you're not from PA, but when hunting season starts, when you drive down a highway in Pennsylvania, pickup trucks will line the highway and hunters will be standing literally on the side of the road with AR-15s and other rifles, shooting 2-3 rounds and other rounds out into the countryside, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards away downrange to hit a deer. And then they trundle themselves all the way out there and drag the carcass all the way back to their pickup truck. Has anybody in PA seen this? Any country part of Pennsylvania. That's what you see. And if you've never seen it before, you're going to be shocked. You're going to say, what the living hell? Is this World War III? No, it's called hunting season. This is a no-brainer shot. The good Lord intervened to prevent Trump's head from being blown off on live television. And we have to ask ourselves today, in the gravity, the magnitude of this moment, where would we be today if Donald Trump had died live on national television? Where would we be as Western kind? Where would we be as this community with somebody so central, so popular, so beloved, that already has legitimized one of our concepts that we successfully swashed to him and will legitimize more? Where would we be today in the defense of Western kind, the recapture of our destiny, the recapture of the United States? The Republican Party, and it doesn't matter who cares, would pick some GOP shill, the GOP shill on the momentum of they killed Trump, would easily go to the presidency, and we would get more anti-whiteism. It would never end. The foreign wars would continue. The service to Israel would continue. The war with Russia in Ukraine, until every last white Ukrainian male and boy, man and boy, and every last white Russian man and boy were dead. That's what we would get. This opportunity to legitimize the dialectics and lexicon that liberate us and non-white people from the anti-white narrative, changing the story we live our lives in, would be gone. It doesn't get any bigger than Donald Trump legitimizing these concepts, legitimizing the didactic nature of the Go Free stratagem. We would be back to just pushing, swashing on content creators, which is working fabulously. But the setback and the subsequent conflict abroad, maybe a military draft, more Raytheon, more Boeing, more defense contractors pushing their weapons of death and destruction, while more airplanes fall out of the sky, civilian airliners lose their wheels, burst into flames. 4 years that we could have had some modicum of normalcy with Trump, and the much more important legitimization or potential legitimization of the Go Free stratagem, gone in favor of maybe the final anti-white push for our people in America, and good people of all races as a consequence. Shooter is ID'd, of course. Let me show you this, because this will show you, prove to you, or potentially this is Sky News.
If these pictures are what they appear to be.
That blurry spot here is the shooter. You'll see right here this little connection, this little hallway between these buildings. A giant ladder he used.
be, if that is a shooter deceased on top of that building 150 meters away from the rally venue, if that is the shooter who discharged the bullets.
Look right here, you'll see the orange ladder
that led to the incident inside that rally venue. There will be questions asked about where the Secret Service
Can you see it right here?
Security perimeter ended. If
there
this building was outside that Secret Service perimeter, and if it was.
So just to show you again, in case there's anybody, I didn't know, I didn't see anybody, but in case there were anybody saying that's not where he was, that's exactly where he was, right there. That's the hallway. That's where the ladder was placed by him. There's that can't park here, loading, and car won't be able to pull up zone. This is where he was, right there. That is where Donald Trump was. There are automobiles for scale, 1 football field away. There's a lot going on here, and it's why I say this was no lack of manpower. This was no accident by the Secret Service. Do y'all remember there were a couple streams where I specifically said that the Secret Service, when they raided Mar-a-Lago, the Secret Service could kill Trump? I specifically said that. Why is that? Not because there is one person at the top that decides and everybody else is an automaton, but because they are all infected with the anti-white narrative. The white people there not only infected with the anti-white narrative, but selfishly individualistic, asking themselves not what's good for this country, what is the moral thing to do, but what is good for me as an individual. So here you can see in this diagram, here's the shooter, right where I was showing you. And here is where the Secret Service were. Although I think in that video, let's have another look. I think I have that video because I thought potentially they were on this rooftop, which places them even closer. But maybe not. And you'll see in the video, the snipers, they're wearing uniforms that say police. And at first I thought that they were just local law enforcement. But now I've heard everywhere, and maybe they are, but now I've heard everywhere that they were Secret Service snipers. Doesn't make them better snipers, but it makes them Secret Service snipers. You can clearly see they are both looking at the shooter. They are both facing directly at Crooks, and they're waiting. Now, you have a lot of anti-white people and otherwise a lot of imbeciles. They grow up on Hollywood and Hollywood physics. They don't understand actual physics. They don't understand the actual physics of our world. That's how you get so many people that idiots will say, "Or Darwin Award. Look, he got a Darwin." Because they've watched movies and they think that you can actually get on a tricycle and launch over a flaming car and land safely on the other side. They haven't actually been out in the world learning physics from the real world. Like little boys in the past, we did things that testosterone drove us to push the edges of our limits on. But we never thought you could do things like get on a tricycle and fly over top with a ramp of a flaming car and everything's going to come out fine on the other. We knew that gravity was going to interfere with this, that the wheels on the tricycle weren't going to be able to turn that fast without breaking apart. We knew these things because we were pushing the limits in the real world. Since people don't understand the real world, they say dumb things like when there's a shootout and police pull their gun out and some villain has thrown his gun, his firearm out, and he starts shooting, they ask stupid things like, why did they have to shoot him? Why didn't they just shoot the gun out of his hand? That is fiction. That is Hollywood physics. That's not the real world. You can't aim and shoot a gun out of someone's hands unless you're a trained sniper and you have a scope on them and they aren't moving. You then can disable the firearm with a well-placed shot. So even for those out there that might try to argue, well, it would have been illegal or wrong to shoot him, which it wouldn't have. It absolutely would not have. And let me promise you, if you train a weapon on Barack Obama or any of these, Hillary Clinton, they will kill you dead, as we say down home. They're not going to wait for you to shoot. They're not going to wait for you to blow their head off before they shoot you. There is no conceivable universe in where it's defensible that you are training a firearm on somebody who is a former president running for president. And it's like, well, if we go to court, it's going to be okay that they did that. They didn't actually blow their head off. There is no universe where there's a defense. The Secret Service snipers would have had the authority. I may or may not know that this is the case, to take the shot without having to report it. But with all the time they had, they would have been able to radio and say, and it's not the same like old TV shows, they got to pick up a walkie-talkie and say, today's sniper here. You know, it's nothing like that. They just talk. And it goes through to command center, who is controlling everything at the venue. That's what the Secret Service does. Maybe you all haven't thought a lot about this, but there isn't an inch of airspace, an inch of water, an inch of terrain with line of sight that is not watched and locked down by the Secret Service. That lake nearby would have been locked down by the Secret Service. Nothing could have come out of the lake. Nothing could have hung out in the lake and waited. It would have been examined and locked down. Eyes on it 100% of the time until Trump is gone and the venue is closed. The sky full of drones. Cameras everywhere. Watching every cubic inch of the venue and beyond. Everything is seen by the Secret Service. Everything. So not only are these two snipers watching the assassin get ready, but drones would have been looking at him as well. Drones, and if you think, I don't know, maybe you think they're just for observation, maybe most of them are, but I'm inclined to think that some of those drones are capable of delivering a payload, a single round or whatever. Do you really think the U.S., the United States, is not equipped with such weaponry to protect the people in office? I'm speculating. Doesn't sound like sci-fi to me. Not at all. Maybe sci-fi 50 years ago, 40 years ago. Not sci-fi anymore. Not sci-fi for a long time. if I had to guess, the Secret Service were in the lake. The Secret Service were in the air. The Secret Service were everywhere. On top of this, you had citizens who saw Crooks climbing his ladder with an AR-15, telling the police, telling Secret Service members. The videos are everywhere. The interviews are everywhere. And what do we have on Fox News today? Which, by the way, we'll look how they were headlining this. A very masculine-looking female telling Fox News, oh, well, yes, the Secret Service was told, but and police were told, but it's hard to communicate between the police and the state and the bullshit. Bullshit. What do you think this is the 1930s? You think that's how dumb we are? You have a hard time communicating because you're not on the same frequencies? Do you know what frequency the other groups, law enforcement, are on? If so, then you can communicate with them. Not only that, but there would be a command center which would incorporate all of the different branches who were involved. I may or may not know that's how this operates. Maybe it's just my opinion. So they're saying long before. Now they're speculating, well, maybe the citizens saved a headshot because Crooks was having to rush. No, good Lord, the good Lord saved the headshot. The drones would have seen, in my opinion, Crooks get out of his car with the ladder or grab the ladder and carrying the AR-15. The audience saw Crooks walking with a ladder and an AR-15, placing the ladder, climbing up the ladder. They were telling law enforcement. They were telling state police. They were telling Secret Service, according to the interviews. I wasn't there. According to the numerous interviews, they were saying he's getting ready up on the roof with a rifle. He's getting ready to shoot. While this is happening, the Secret Service snipers are looking at Crooks through their scopes. You see them in the video I'm going to play. They're watching and waiting. For what? So let's reel this back for one moment. If the Secret Service were not intentionally, now I don't know, I have no way of knowing whether or not the Secret Service, per individuals in positions of authority, examined this location, and I assume there is a team that comes out for the Secret Service and says, we're going to do things like we're going to be in the storm and sewers at this location so that assassins can't sneak up through those. Oh, yeah, they do that. I may or may not know that for sure. I may or may not know for 100% sure. That's what they do. And we're going to be in that body of water. And we're going to be on every rooftop with a sight line to the rostrum. Certainly one just a football field away. A football field away. A child's shot from that distance with a rifle, .223 round and scope. Literal 10-year-olds shoot that far at shooting competitions. And that team went out and said, you know what? No, we're not going to cover that roof. They literally went out there and said, for whatever reason, that sight line from just one football field, including the end zones, and a couple yards more, we're not going to cover that. They literally said that. Now, was that because somebody with the final authority knew that a sniper that an assassin was going to climb up there? Probably not, but, you know, who knows? Or what is much more likely is it that we have a population infected with anti-whiteism that has heard incessantly that Donald Trump is the personification of pure evil, and he's going to destroy the world, and that there are people in the Secret Service who are radical anti-whites. Those are certainly the ones they elevate each other to power, don't they, with white erasure? I mean, after all, it is Cheadle, Kimberly in charge of the Secret Service, right? She got her job because a white man didn't get it, a white man that deserved it, not an anti-white white man, but a white man that deserved the job. She got her job because of anti-whiteism. Radical anti-whites all the way down to vagues who signal anti-whiteism, villainy signal to all their friends, make it very easy for them to intentionally drop the ball at every venue. Does that sound reasonable? It sure does. Why guard this guy? Why go all out? Yes, it's a dereliction of duty, but this is Hitler. And then when the anti-whites in power, or positions of power, and positions with no power, when they say, therefore, the ones who can drop the dime, as they say, on those who are a little reluctant, who are maybe a little intractable, they don't want to just go along with the plan and get them fired. Maybe when those anti-whites say, you know what, suddenly we don't have the resources for, we don't have I could see an anti-white saying, we don't have enough resources really to allocate for these events, whether it's manpower, financial, other systems of monitoring the environment, of which there are plenty of them that would appear like Star Trek to most of you, looking through buildings, through walls, okay? Through walls, all right? Through buildings. We don't have the resources. And because the people in the Secret Service who are not fanatical anti-white, but maybe just vagues, certainly the white vagues out there, villainy signaling anti-whiteism, they are selfish individualists. So they're saying, oh, well, I'm interested in me. I don't want to lose my job. I'm not going to go public and whistle blow on these anti-whites because the anti-whites will burn me. And then my little daughter won't be able to get her Flintstone vitamins anymore that she needs. She won't be able to get her chemotherapy that she needs, whatever it is, her orthodontist visits. So I'm just not going to say anything. How many of these events has Donald Trump had insufficient security? How many times has Donald Trump had lines of sight from which assassins, psychotic, anti-white, misfit, defective monsters could attempt to kill him from? How many times? Indeed, I didn't even take the opportunity. I thought about it. How many other places at this venue could Donald Trump have been killed from? How many times has this happened? That, to me, strikes me as the most likely cause of this assassination attempt. You leave the door wide open to people you don't care about. You don't do your job. You don't do your due diligence. And then maybe, the guy who shot Teddy Roosevelt was driven to shooting Roosevelt by the media. He said so himself. He said he was doing it. The media at the time were going on ad nauseum about the importance of just 2 terms even though there was no law, there was no rule. And he actually said he shot him to protect the sanctity of 2 terms. And you think a psychotic person wouldn't show up? I mean, if you were a betting man or woman in the Secret Service, you would think that these hunting towns, these hunting communities would be the best places to leave lines of sight open. That's where it begins, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, it's just speculation, but there's a little bit more speculation to examine. When the population began telling law enforcement, state troopers, county cops, and Secret Service agents that there is a man with a ladder and an AR-15, and he's climbing on the ARG building right now. He's walking over to it right now. What is the appropriate response for the Secret Service? To immediately whisk Trump from the scene. Why? Why? Because the Secret Service doesn't know whether that is the only shooter. Maybe there's another. Maybe there are 2, 3 more. And maybe they are already in position. The appropriate response at the moment that the call comes in from any of this law enforcement to the nerve center, in other words, state, county, and Secret Service nerve center that is coordinating the protection of Donald Trump, the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party, as well as the venue, and specifically in an environment of heightened hostility for this nominee, a former president just years ago. The immediate and only response should have been that at that very moment, the Secret Service team that surround the rostrum rush the stage at lightning speed, and they tackle Trump, and they throw their bodies all over him. And then once they have covered all his flesh with their flesh, they then very slowly get him up and walk him away, covering him the entire time. No place where an assassin's crosshairs could find the commander-in-chief to be and former. That is the only response. That is the Secret Service's only fucking job. Excuse my French. They are complicit. They, at a minimum, connived. And if you want to know the difference between collude and connive, I'll give you a lesson, English lesson. Collude potentially means that they worked together with a party they appeared to be separated from to defraud or harm a third party. Connive means that they winked at it. They didn't officially or unofficially or in any real tangible way worked with another party to harm a third party, but they knew it was happening and they allowed it to happen. The Secret Service did not need to train or to be in cooperation with this goofy anti-white misfit, or in cooperation with BlackRock or Blackwater or the Green Berets or who all the others that they're saying trained this tarred from the tarred farm, from the back of the woods tarred farm. They don't need to have had any of that, because at that moment that the calls came in, that there was a man with an AR-15 and a ladder in an adjacent parking lot, 1 football field away. At that moment, the Secret Service connived in the assassination of Donald Trump. At that moment, they connived. At that moment, they knew that this man, Crooks, was climbing this roof with an AR-15, 1 football field away, 4 times within the effective envelope of that weapon. And they did not rush the stage and tackle Trump. Again, they don't have to wait for the guy to get on the roof and to begin setting up, because they don't know if there are or are not other assassins. When an assassin shows up, you must conclude that there are others. And indeed, after he took his shots, after he attempted to assassinate Donald Trump and murdered someone and maimed other people in the audience, they immediately implemented the protocol that I'm talking about, that there are other shooters, that there are other assassins, that there are other weapons. End of story. End of debate. End of investigation. But they didn't tackle Trump, did they? No. Those Secret Service, including those fat-ass females, they just hung back. They hung back as Secret Service, State and County Police Nerve Center received the information that a man, according to witnesses, now remember, I wasn't there. So if you want to blame all of these different interviews and all the news agencies that are reporting this, blame them. It's not me saying this. I'm reporting what they reported. As they received the information, there was no call put out to these agents surrounding Trump to tackle him and whisk him away as quickly as possible. There is no excuse imaginable for why that wouldn't immediately happen, except for conniving with what was about to happen. Indeed, the 2 snipers, as you'll see in just a moment, for the Secret Service, are on the roof, looking through their scopes, which would have given them a view of the assassin this big inside that scope. They could have shot the weapon rather than shooting the assassin and incapacitated the weapon. They could 100% put a round downrange in the action of the weapon. They could have 100% shot the barrel of the assassin's weapon. As the assassin is not moving, as he's preparing, as he's setting his weapon up, as he's setting himself up. And obviously, they could have shot him, because they did. They could have put a bullet right through his head, because they did. But instead of taking the shot and preventing Donald Trump from being assassinated, preventing father and husband from losing his life, preventing 2 Trump supporters from being maimed by the assassin's bullets, they waited until he took the shot to kill Trump. They waited. Ladies and gentlemen, it's one thing. I really want you to appreciate this as adults. We are the adults in the room. They watched as the assassin crawled up this roof, lined up his AR-15, set his scope, positioned his hands, moved his finger to the trigger, took a couple of slow breaths, and then the slow inhale and the very slow exhale, and then pull the trigger. It's one thing for some dirtbag to murder someone out in the world. Beyond that, it's another thing for like a drug lord, some gang member, we should say, next level, to order a hit on some other gang member, some useless life out on the streets. Next up, drug lord or mafia member ordering a gang hit on somebody. It is another tier of psychological control to effectuate an assassination with a narrative you inflict on society by way of the most powerful protection service on planet Earth, conniving with a psychotic anti-white, an anti-white terrorist. And when I say psychotic, I'm not giving him an excuse. I'm not saying that he's literally diagnosed with a psychosis or psychoses or even neurosis. But the act of assassinating, euphemistically, evil, psychotic, this is an anti-white terrorist. That is why this level of control over the population by the true holders of power, which is not some fucking cartoon, G.I. Joe level, some G.I. Joe level of understanding, that some video game level of understanding, that there is the ultimate boss, and if you take out the ultimate boss, everything is peaches and roses from there on. That's not how humanity is controlled, you dim-witted shits! And if you don't get it, we are destined for oblivion. You don't have to be able to understand it, but you have to pledge allegiance to those who do. You can't keep giving time, allegiance, money, attention, fame to people who are going to give you the child's video game tier understanding of how power works in the world. You all think you have such a grasp. You have this arrogance of you have such a grasp on how it all works. And you don't know shit. It's that arrogance that's your blindness. It's that arrogance that keeps you from seeing how this really works. Why is it that the content creators out there who speak in the most simplistic explanations have the largest audiences? Ever seen a bell curve, dumbass? Ever seen a bell curve where you just found where you fit in that motherfucker, haven't you? Covering all of these kinds of things for you all because grave events like this are important, and understanding them in a way that is productive for us, i.e. white well-being, and therefore the well-being of all people, non-white and white, who live in the West, all Western countries, could not be more critical at this moment. Becoming entranced in conversations about where the real shooters were, and did Israel order this, or did defense contractors order this, and all this other kind of stuff, takes you away from the only productive breakdown and the tools available to you in the Go Free stratagem to recapture our destiny. What does an evaluation of, did Israel do this? Did the RNC do this? Did defense contractors do this? Did the tech billionaires do this? How does that help our people? How does it help? It doesn't. Not one iota. These kinds of discussions have surfeited our lives for generations. And look at where we are today. Little boys in the middle of these parades of naked men performing sex acts on each other, urinating in each other's faces in public. I mean, check it out for yourself. Maybe I'm wrong. Little boys dressed up as sexual dolls in the midst of these parades. Do you want to continue to indulge the conspiracy theories and the blaming of other races for it and all? That's how we got here. Do you want to continue to indulge that? If so, this ain't the place for you. This is for adults. So let's have a look at these and the actual video of the snipers and the shooting. On the left, you see the snipers, a close-up of the two snipers, two white guys, although I'm sure we're going to hear how they're both Jews from the multiracial Jew-hating community. Two white guys. But here's the video that's important. Can I enlarge that? I don't know. There we go.
And you know, that's a little bit old.
Okay. What you're seeing right now, this over here, can you see my cursor? That's Donald Trump right there. So I was right. I was right. The snipers are closer than on that article they were showing you. That was on the New York Post. The New York Post was wrong. Remember, the New York Post put the Secret Service snipers at the building furthest away from the sniper, from the assassin, rather. They are on the building closest to the assassin. You see it right here. There's Trump. The New York Post said that these guys were on a building to the right of Trump. No, they're on the building closest to the assassin. So what does that mean? The assassin is one football field away from Donald Trump. These snipers are closer than a football field to the assassin. Wow. Wow. There you go. You got the full view. That's the last building. Not the buildings this way on that picture. Not the buildings to the right of the view of the camera, but the building furthest to the left. So now watch what happens. Both of these Secret Service snipers, less than a football field distance away, including the end zones and a couple yards, to the assassin, less than that, are watching the assassin. They are looking directly at him. Line up with an AR-15. Let's watch.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
That sound right there. 767 miles an hour. Came after the bullet struck, the assassin's bullet struck Donald Trump. A 32nd of an inch from blowing up his head. Look at the snipers. They're watching the entire time. This one closest to you raises his head, then quickly lowers his head and takes the shot. This one on the right hides. Yeah, you heard me right. He hides.
What the fuck?
We'll watch it again all the way through, with sound and without. Here we go with sound. Remember, the sounds of the shots are arriving after the bullets have already hit their marks.
And you know, that's a little bit old. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
This is both of these guys. I mean, there has to be, who gave them the order to just watch? Or are they going to end up being the fall guys? How far, how many anti-whites does this go? But getting rid of those people does not fix the problem, because the problem is the phenomenon of anti-whiteism that has dehumanized white life. Donald Trump represents this bulwark, however unintended, and to whatever meager degree, to the victimization of Western kind and the destruction of our countries, specifically this one, United States, obviously. So you're not going to fire these people or just try them and execute. You'll just repopulate with people who will do the exact same thing. Let's watch it with no sound. Watch the body behavior. Let's blow it up. Watch the body behavior of the snipers. No sound. Watching. Takes the shot. Look at this one hide. Watch it with sound one more time. And remember as you're looking at this, these two guys are looking at the assassin all this time. They are looking, we don't know how long before the video starts that they are looking at the assassin. You notice, how do we know that they're looking at the assassin? They don't suddenly swivel to where the assassin is. They don't suddenly like look up and then move their firearm in the direction, recalibrate, reset, and take their shot. They just take the shot. That's how you know that they're looking at their target. Try to appreciate what we are seeing here, and then try to appreciate how we can't continue with the old vehicles, the old excuses, the old ideologies anymore. We are way past that. Keep in mind, every half a second, as fast as you can think, that they are looking at the assassin and they don't shoot until he has blown Donald Trump's head off. That bullet was meant to explode Donald Trump's head. It did blow up the head of a patriotic American Trump supporter who threw his body over his wife and daughter. And she gave a tribute on Twitter today that will cause tears to just pour from your eyes about how she wants to throw herself on his body, thanking him for what he did. They waited until the assassin had assassinated Donald Trump, murdered this Trump supporter, and maimed two others before they took their shot. Don't let the sound screw you up. The sound is getting there slower.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
What the fuck?
We can't go around anymore. We can't let midwits decide anymore. We can't let these multiracial, Jew-hating movement decide anymore who they slander, who's going to get attention, who's not going to get, who's going to be silenced. You just watched the Secret Service watch Donald Trump get assassinated. You just watched the Secret Service watch as Donald Trump was assassinated. I can't believe there are so few of us, so few men and women of the West left in Western civilization.